guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's case is a very iconic Australian case. If you especially live in Australia, you would have heard the saying, "The dingoes got my baby." It's literally still going on to this day. This case happened like ages ago, years ago in the 80s, and to this day we still hear things like that, especially on like TV and like ads and things like that, which I personally think is quite upsetting because someone lost their life in this and everyone's pretty much just making a joke about it. But anyway, this is the case of Azaria Chamberlain. So before we get into this case, I just want to say that once again, I can't 100% guarantee that all this information is 100% accurate. All of this information is just all different sources I have found on the internet, and I've just got information from that and I put it into this video. So Azaria Chamberlain was born on the 11th of June in 1980, and she is daughter to Lindy and Michael Chamberlain. So I'm just going to give a little bit of a background on both Lindy and Michael and their background on when they were younger and growing up. So we'll start with Lindy first. So Lindy was born on the 4th of March in 1948, and she was born on the North Island of New Zealand. When Lindy was 2 years old, she moved to Australia. Her father was a pastor, so they moved a lot to different churches and they moved quite a bit. As a young adult, she worked as a waitress and as a shopkeeper, and then when she got a bit older, she worked as a bookkeeper and as a receptionist. So that's all I could find on Lindy for the moment. So we'll go over to Michael now. So Michael was born on the 27th of February in 1944, and in 1965 he came to Australia. Michael studied at Avondale College in Cornbong, I think that's how you pronounce it, in New South Wales. So the college is a very Christian college, and it's actually the world's largest Christian school system. Michael graduated in 1969 with a Bachelor of Arts. In 1969, Lindy and Michael got married, and shortly after they got married, they moved to Tasmania, and Michael worked as a Seventh-day Adventist minister. So Seventh-day is basically just a religion. It's kind of like Christianity, but it's a little bit different. I couldn't really find too much information out there. It just kept coming up with this church. So I'm guessing they were both Seventh-day Adventist, and so just keep that in mind because the religion does kind of play a role in this case. You'll see later on why. On the 2nd of October in 1973, Lindy gave birth to their first child, Aidan Lee, in Tasmania. On the 16th of April in 1976, they gave birth to their second child, named Regan. I think that's how you pronounce it. So a year after Regan was born, so in 1977, the family decided to move to Queensland, and once they moved there, they were just your ordinary family. Lindy was actually a dressmaker, and she made wedding dresses for people in the town, and Michael actually had his own radio show called The Good Life, and it was basically just commentary on lifestyle and culture of the people in the northern parts of Queensland. So shortly after moving to Queensland, they moved to Mount Isa, which is like a countryside of Queensland, and that is when their third child was born, Azaria Chamberlain, and she was born on the 11th of June in 1980. 2 months after Azaria was born, the family decided to go on a little bit of a camping trip. So the plan was originally just to go to Darwin and just camp in Darwin because Michael wanted to go fishing and catch some barramundi, but Lindy remembered when she was 16 years old, she went to Uluru and she absolutely loved it there, so she decided she wanted to take her family there and revisit it. So on the 16th of August in 1980, the family were going to go to Uluru. They were going to camp there for 3 days, and then after that they were going to make their way to Darwin. So the family got there pretty late on the 16th of August, so they pretty much just set up their camp and then pretty much went to sleep. And then the following day, so the 17th of August, Michael took the two boys, Aidan and Regan, to climb up Ayers Rock, and Lindy just had Azaria with her in her arms and was just kind of walking around doing her own thing. It was confirmed by pretty much everyone that was staying at Uluru that night that everyone pretty much saw dingoes. They were kind of lurking around. There was food there and they probably wanted to have something to eat. So everyone that was at the campfire did confirm that they were dingoes. Michael was feeding one of the dingoes some leftover crust. And Lindy actually said to him, no, don't do that. You're just going to encourage them to keep coming near us. Leave them alone. So if you don't know what a dingo is, it's basically just a wild dog, and they pretty much just live out in the wild. I'll post some photos next in case you haven't seen a dingo or you don't know what they look like. Shortly before 8 p.m. on the night of the 17th of August, Lindy decided to take Azaria to sleep. They took her back to the tent in her little bassinet where she would sleep. And little Reagan, who was I think only 4 at the time, also went down to sleep as well. They had a massive day, so they were probably really tired. So after Lindy put Azaria to sleep, she came back to the campfire. Apparently Aiden was playing with some of the other kids. They were like chasing mice or something like that. But yeah, so Lindy came back to the campfire. She was just, I guess, talking with all the other tourists there. And shortly after 8 p.m, they heard a very serious cry coming from the Chamberlain's tent. So Lindy got up, she went to go check out what was going on. And according to her, Azaria was at the back of the tent. And so Lindy was kind of like coming around and could see like the back of the dingo. She couldn't see like the dingo's head because it was inside the tent, but could see the back of the dingo. It was dark. She probably didn't realize that it was actual dingo. So she ended up going inside the tent to go see, and that's when she saw the dingo snatch Azaria and basically run off with it. And Michael also confirmed that he saw the dingo running off with his baby. Lindy came out running from the tent back to the campsite saying, my God, the dingo's got my baby. And that is what everyone has basically just run with, and the dingo's got my baby has become an iconic Australian saying. After the news broke out that Azaria had been taken by a dingo, pretty much everyone that was staying at Uluru searched for her. This consisted of 300 people that included men, women and teenagers. And they searched with torchlights pretty much throughout the whole night, trying to find anything such as like clothing, a body, pretty much anything to suggest that where the dingo has taken the baby. There was one man in particular who didn't actually follow everyone else. He kind of went on his own trail. His name was Murray Happy, and he was just following some dingo footprints that he could see. And pretty much after he followed this, he could see like sunken ground. And on the sunken ground was like a pattern. So he thought that this was very unusual. So he quickly called Derek Hoff, who was the ranger at Uluru at the time. And so Derek came to check out what he was talking about, and it looked like the pattern that was in the sand was kind of like a knitted pattern. So like if you had like a knitted top like this and you put it down on sand, it kind of had the exact same pattern. But they tried to follow the footprints more, but it hit a road, and that was the end of that. Pretty much after that, the case was pretty much cold, I guess. The forensics were trying to do forensic testing on the tent. There was blood absolutely everywhere on the tent. It was all up on the walls, all down the floor, on her bassinet. It was like pools of blood. So I guess they were just trying to do forensic tests, and the police were just trying to investigate it. But 1 week later, a photographer named Wally Goodwin went to Uluru just to take some photos of wildflowers, and he saw laying on like a boulder, which is a rock, he saw what he described as torn up nappy and a jumpsuit. So he quickly called police, and the police quickly came to Uluru to take this for evidence. But what the detective did, he basically, before he took photos of the jumpsuit and nappy, he picked up the jumpsuit and held it like this, and he looked at it to see if there was any human remains left in it. When he found out that there wasn't, he put it back down, and then he took the photo. Remember this because this comes in play later on in the case. As soon as this happened to Azaria, and obviously Lindy and Michael gave their statement to police saying that the dingo stole their baby and took their baby, police just did not believe them from the get-go. Like, police were building a case against them, saying that they murdered her, even though they had no body, they had no evidence, nothing to go off. From the get-go, police were like, no way, a dingo did not take this baby, you guys killed her and you guys have buried her somewhere. So police had no interest at all about trying to find a dingo or anything like that. They were literally just trying to build a case against both Lindy and Michael Chamberlain. So what they did in Adelaide, there was a wildlife park called Clendon Park, I think that's how you pronounce it, and they had lots of dingoes there. So they kind of did like an experiment. So they got some meat and they wrapped it up in a nappy and they threw it at the dingoes to see how they would react and how they would shred up this nappy. Now, I don't know how this experiment actually went. It didn't really say, it kind of just stopped at there on the sources. But I have read that dingoes are very careful with like unwrapping things. So like they don't really tear things too much. Like they're very neat eaters. So, to my knowledge, I don't think that it actually shredded up the nappy too badly. But yeah, not 100% sure. As you guys know, this story became very popular, especially in Australia. So newspapers and medias, as you can imagine, ran with this story. They kind of agreed with the police. They said, no way this dingo killed this baby. There's absolutely no way. The parents are completely guilty. So what they did was they watched every single move that Lindsay made, and they didn't really care too much about Michael. Lindsay did, what she said, how she reacted. She tried to not be so show so emotion. She tried to be emotionless, because if she showed emotion, they would say that she was overreacting and she was crocodile tears and things like that. So if you remember, I told you guys that Lindy and Michael were religious. They were Seventh-day Advocates. Well, I told you guys to remember that because news reporters and all the media, things like that, came forward with all these different rumors that were just completely out of this world, saying that Lindy and Michael, because they were Seventh-day Advocates, they took Azaria to Uluru, planned this murder, planned it to kill her and give her away to the devil, or they just did it for religious reasons, and that their religion was actually really bad and it was about the devil. And so apparently they were linked to this mass suicide that happened 2 years earlier. Apparently they were involved, even though it was nothing to do with them at all. So I don't understand how they got that. But yeah, so their religion played a massive role in this case. There was just like so many rumors going around that their religion was to do with all of these different killings and everything like that, when really it was just nothing. So I do really feel sorry for Lindsay. Like, you know, your child has literally been taken off you and everyone's just bagging you and making fun of what you said and things like that. So it was a really tough time for them, but they were trying to live their life normally. They had 2 other kids to look after, so they were just trying to do things normally and pretty much live their life, trying to get away from the media. There was 4 inquests in this case. The first one began on December 16th in 1980, and this was by Ashley McKay and Dennis Barrett, I think that's how you pronounce it. So Ashley McKay took to the courtrooms basically saying that there was no way that this dingo could kill this baby. There's absolutely no way at all. The parents absolutely did it. There was no signs at all. The clothes that were found, there was no signs that a dingo would do way more damage, things like that. Whereas Dennis Barrett was saying that basically, no, the dingo could have done this. It's very likely there was dingoes in the areas. And I actually have a quote from him, and he said, Azaria met her death when attacked by a wild dingo whilst asleep in her family's tent. The body of Azaria was taken from the possession of the dingo and disposed by an unknown method by a person or persons name unknown. So basically what he's saying is, yes, the dingo did take her out of the tent. Yes, the dingo dragged her, but the dingo didn't eat her. They're saying that someone grabbed Azaria out of the dingo's mouth, or from the dingo, and then killed her, and then buried her, and then put her clothes on the boulder. Because if you remember, that's where the clothes were found. And because the police officer decided to take the clothes and hold it up and then put it back down and take a photo, it looked like the clothes were actually laid down. So it wouldn't look like a dingo put them there. I'll show you some photos next that I found as well, and you can kind of make a decision for yourself on that. Due to this inquest, police decided to raid the Chamberlain's home on September 19th in 1981. They actually seized over 300 items, which included clothing and scissors, remember that? And they also seized their car as well for further testing. They did obviously test their car to begin with at the start, but I guess they wanted to do more forensic testing on it and see what else they could find. So on December 14th in 1981, there was another inquest done on this case, and this was by coroner Gary Galvin, I think that's what his name is, and he basically said that Lindy took Azaria from the campsite, took her to the car and slit her throat with some scissors, and then she went to go bury the body. So this accusation was made against Lindy because when they took the car from seizing, they forensically tested it and it came back positive that there was blood underneath the dashboard on the passenger side and kind of like splattered around that kind of area. So therefore, Lindy must have murdered her daughter in their car. So despite having no body, no motive, and no eyewitnesses to this murder, the Northern Territory Police decided to go ahead and prosecute Lindy and Michael Chamberlain. At this time, Lindy was actually, I think, 8 months pregnant with their 4th child. So as you can imagine, this case was absolutely massive. So this prosecution was aired all over the country. Everyone could watch it. It was live. So the jury consisted of 9 men and 3 women. As I said before, taking this back to the timeline when they were actually at Uluru and they were at the campsite, sat down, and I said that they were talking to other tourists there as well. Well, one of them came forward. Her name was Sally Lowe, I think that's her last name. She came forward and she actually took the stand, and she definitely backed up what the Chamberlains were saying. She said, and I quote, "Lindy was only away from the barbecue for 6 to 10 minutes. She was positive she heard a serious cry coming from the tent before Lindsay went to the tent. Sally also confirmed that she saw a dingo also walking off in the dark, but she couldn't say if it did have Azaria in its mouth or if it had anything in its mouth at all, but she could see the back of the dingo walking away from the tent into the dark wood." The prosecutors also came forward and basically said everything that I said to you guys, that there was no way the dingo could do this, the damage wasn't enough on the clothing, just no way that a dingo could even fit a baby in its mouth, which I don't understand why they think that, because even like just a domestic dog can do that. If you have dogs, you would probably know that if a dog can do that, definitely a wild animal can do that. But the biggest thing of all was the blood stains found in the car that actually had fetal blood in it. So it was proven to be human blood. It was proven to be fetal blood. So they therefore put 2 and 2 together, and that was a massive thing that brought down this case. And actually, 29th of October in 1982, at 8:37 p.m, Lindy and Michael were found guilty of the murder of 2-month-old Azaria Chamberlain. Lindy was found guilty and was sentenced to life in jail without the possibility of parole, and Michael was found guilty of being an accessory to murder after the fact. The judge actually ended up suspending Michael's sentence, and he said this to Michael, and I quote, "I consider it not only appropriate, but in the interests of justice to do so." 1 month into Lindsay's sentence, she gave birth to their 4th daughter named Kaylia, I think that's how you pronounce it. Kaylia was actually taken off her as soon as Lindy gave birth, and she was put into foster care. In 1983, Lindy appealed her sentence, and she was actually out on bail for a short time before the appeal was unsuccessful, and then she was back in jail. A couple of years later, I think they just decided they were just going to forensically test the car again, and new evidence came through actually saying that the blood stains found in the car actually weren't blood stains. Now, what they were is very controversial because lots of sources say like completely different things. So this is what I've gotten so far, that what the blood stains could be. I've heard that it could be chocolate milk, it could be dust, like because they lived out in the country, you know how you get like that red dust? It was like red dust and chocolate milkshake mixed together, and it came back positive for blood. Or it was like some paint. So there's 3 different things there that apparently this blood stain was, but it was 100% not blood at all, and that was ruled out. There was no blood at all in the car, which was the massive piece of evidence the prosecutors used to prosecute Lindy and Michael. In January 1986, English hiker David Brett was climbing Ayers Rock when he tragically fell down to his death. Now, his body was discovered 8 days after his death, and it was found near like a dingo's lair. So police decided to look around this area for missing bones that dingoes might have taken from David's body, and they actually found a jacket. So they found a wood jacket, so it was like a knitwear like this, that was found all bloodied up and covered in blood and covered in dirt, and it looked like it belonged to a baby. If you remember, there was a jumpsuit and a nappy found that belonged to Azaria, but Lindy and Michael kept saying that there was a jacket that she was wearing and it wasn't found, so where would it be? She was definitely wearing this jacket. Well, it turns out this jacket that they found was the jacket that Lindy and Michael were talking about. So this jacket was also very controversial because the police just did not believe that this jacket existed. They just thought they were making this up because the police were asking them questions like, if a dingo took your baby, how come there's no dingo saliva on the jumpsuit? Or if the dingo took your baby, how come it's not got any dingo hair on it? And Lindy and Michael kept saying theirs was the jacket on first. That if the dingo took my baby, the jacket would have the dingo saliva on it. This jacket exists, the dingo has this jacket. And they obviously didn't believe her. They did not believe that the dingo took her baby, so they did not believe that this jacket even existed until now. So this was a massive, massive breakthrough, finding this jacket. So on February 7th in 1986, Lindy was released from prison. Pretty much soon after Lindy was released, her daughter that she gave birth to in prison, Kalia, was released back into her care. And in 1992, Lindy actually got a payout. She got $1.3 million in compensation due to being wrongfully convicted of murder. In February 2012, there was one last inquest into this case, and this was going to be the final inquest, the final say, and this was done by coroner Elizabeth Morris. So on June 12th in 2012, Morris said this, and this closed the case for good, and it has been solved to this day, and this is what Morris has said. The evidence is sufficiently adequate, clear, cogent, and exact to exclude all other reasonable possibilities than that a dingo entered the tent when Lindy and Michael Chamberlain's young daughter lay resting on that August night 32 years earlier. And so that inquest was the end of it. That was it. She said, yes, the dingo did get the baby. There was all of these different evidence that saying, yes, the dingo was there. There was dingoes in the area. There was dingo track marks. There was dingo like paw prints in blood apparently near the tent. Now this is circumstantial evidence because I don't actually know if that is true. Nobody took photos at all. I don't understand why. Nobody decided to take photos of this, but that is what it was, and that inquest ended this case for good. Okay, so I just want to quickly say here that there is a storm starting outside. It's getting really, really windy, so if you guys can hear the wind or rain or anything like that throughout the video, I'm very, very sorry. I do apologize. I probably chose the wrong day to film this video, but yes, I'm very sorry if you can hear any storm outside. In 1991, Lindy and Michael actually ended up getting a divorce, and in February in 1992, Lindy met a man called Rick Creighton while on a speaking tour in the USA, and they actually got married later that year on December 20th, and they moved to America and they lived in Seattle for a little bit, but then they ended up moving back to Australia where they still live, and I believe they live in New South Wales, somewhere in New South Wales to this day. So Lindy is currently working on a children's book, and she is also working on another book on her grief and loss of her daughter. So in 1994, Michael remarried Ingrid Bergner, I think that's how you pronounce it, and they actually had a daughter together named Zara in 1996. In 2002, Michael graduated from Avondale College with a Bachelor of Teaching, and I believe he taught in different high schools, including an Aboriginal high school as well. In 2008, he ended up retiring, and he actually published a book about the disappearance of his daughter, And on the 9th of January in 2017, Michael actually passed away from complications due to acute leukemia. So that's pretty much it for the rest of this case. It's pretty much a sad case, like really, when you think about it, a baby has lost their life, and to this day, it's still getting mocked. Like what her mother said when she saw a dingo taking away her baby is being mocked, and I just think that is disgusting. I've never gotten involved in that at all. I just really think it's like disgusting, and I'm sure that you could tell throughout this video exactly who I think did it. Obviously, I think the dingo did take the baby. There's so much evidence to point that the dingo did take it. There is just one bit of information, I guess, that makes me question that though, and that's the jumpsuit. The jumpsuit was pretty much hardly touched. And now I know I said that dingoes are very neat eaters and they don't really mess up things too much, but it just gets me that how did the dingo get the baby out of the jumpsuit and the jumpsuit was hardly touched? That's just one thing that I just don't understand at all. But I'm sure that there is a logical explanation for it. Like these things happen. Baby probably just slipped out of the jumpsuit or something like that. But that's just the one thing that really got me growing up knowing about this case was the jumpsuit and how it was pretty much still intact. But yeah, and another thing that got me was the fact that there was no bones found. Did the dingo eat the bones or not? Due to my research, actually, I did Google if dingoes would eat a baby's bones, and apparently they would. Apparently the baby's bones are soft enough for dingoes to actually chew on. Don't forget, Azaria was only 2 months old. She was 9 weeks old. Her bones were tiny, 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 and they would have been quite soft as well. They weren't fully grown at all. Obviously, she was a baby. So yes, I wouldn't be surprised if the dingo actually did eat her whole body, and therefore that's why there was no remains. So that's all for this case, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and comment on this video, and don't forget to comment down below any case suggestions you guys might have. I would love to know your take on this case as well. Do you think the dingo did take the baby? Do you think that the parents are actually responsible? I would absolutely love to know your say on this. Also, don't forget to click the little notification bell if you would like to get notified whenever I post a video. Alright guys, I'm going to go ahead and go. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!